Learning is fun. Let's do that this week. And not just book learning, not analytical knowledge. There's plenty of time for analytical knowledge on the way. We are getting to that time. But this week we've got a really good opportunity to get into some procedural knowledge, some kind of knowing. I think a lot about epistemology because there are so many different ways of knowing things that get pushed by the wayside because they're difficult to talk about, because the talking bit is a certain kind of knowledge. And then all of the knowledge that exists outside of that framework is really difficult to explain because that just takes you right back to the talky bit again. And so we are going to, this week we've got all right, so let's just talk about the astrology a little bit. So this week we've got a Mercury cazimi in Taurus. We love to see a Mercury cazimi, especially this one. This is the forward, direct motion Mercury cazimi. So that is, cazimi is when the Mercury is in the heart of the sun. It is a conjunction with the sun. So the sun is the king, the sovereign, the one who decides all the stuff, is who is the most important one. We all go around the sun, right? And then Mercury is the communicator planet, the one who is in charge. So if the sun is like the self, the source, the light, the one who shines out through your eyes, right? Like if you make eye contact with somebody, then you could be like, there's a vibe there, right? And then Mercury is the one who translates that vibe into something that is intelligible to the other. So it's Mercury is the one who goes in between you and me in order to make the connection so that we can understand each other. Mercury is that piece of things, right? So Mercury and the sun in the same spot. I like to think of that as a special message from the king. So we interrupt your regular programming in order to bring you this special message. That's the kind of vibe here, right? And in Taurus is necessarily a deeply physical and embodied kind of space. So here we're looking at moving into a kind of knowledge that is intelligible in the body space, maybe even more than in the thinky rational space. So I like to think here with something like procedural knowledge or something like that. This looks like a good week to do a craft and learn the way that the craft works. Like there's a certain amount that you can analyze and talk about how to do it, but at a certain point, your hand just has to know how to do it by itself. It has to know how to do it without you talking to someone about it. And there's a certain kind of knowledge that comes from doing that is necessarily different. There's a gulf there. It's separated from the knowledge that is analytical and rational and able to be explained explicitly. And so this is a great week to get in there and do that kind of learning, especially since the ruler of Taurus is in Gemini. The ruler of Taurus, that's Venus, is in Gemini this week, which is ruled by Mercury. And so this is the last week where we get that mutual reception, because next week Mercury is going to move into Gemini. Remember, I promised you we were going to move into thinky, analytical, rational space. That's coming. That's next week. But this week, we have this mutual reception between Mercury, the thinky talker planet, and then Venus, who is the arts and crafts and make the world more beautiful kind of planet, right? And they are working together in this place where they are also not making an aspect to one another. Now, listen, there's... If what we're doing this week is learning, then you can go to zambonifunk.com and you can go to the Astrology from the Ground Up is the name of the course where I teach astrology, and there is at the end of that course there is an assignment where you go and you do a reading for someone else. So the whole way through you've been reading your own chart, and then you do a reading for someone else. It is that learning by doing that we're talking about here. So go to zambonifunk.com. If you don't feel like doing that and you just want me to talk about it and you want me to do the reading for you, I'm so happy to do that. I love doing readings for people. But there is something about doing it yourself and looking at the chart yourself and coming to understand. It's not even, so you start out in the thinky rational space where you're like, okay, so this means that and that means that, and so you sort of list everything out. But then you can come to this place, especially with many reps. I've done this more than, I'm probably at like 11,000 times now or something like that, right? So in doing those reps, then you get to a place where it becomes a little bit intuitive, right? And that intuition is what we can tap into this week while we've got this Mercury here, and while we've got Venus in Gemini. The nice thing about this Venus in Gemini also this week is that Venus in Gemini is making a sextile to Mars in Aries. So a sextile, that's a complementary aspect. It's one of the aspects that is associated with Venus. And so there's something there about like using what you've got and what I've got in order to do something synergistic and better than what we had access to prior to that, right? So the sum is greater than or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know what I'm talking about. You've heard this saying before. You know I love a good aphorism. So, and the reason why I like aphorisms is because it contains so much knowledge and understanding that is deeper than simply the words that you string them together. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts in even the technique of aphorism. It's amazing stuff. I really like it. That's why I like astrology, because it's so metaphorical and the symbolic language contains a deeper meaning than you can even explain, right? And so, anyway, what I'm talking about here is Venus in Gemini sextile to Mars in Aries. Mars is the action planet, the one who's out here doing stuff. Mars is currently in the same sign as Saturn, and so Saturn really cares about doing something challenging and difficult. This is a really good week for learning how to do something that you don't already know how to do, or that is difficult for you in some kind of way, right? So even if it's a craft that you are kind of good at, expanding your horizons in some kind of way, pushing the boundaries a little bit as to what you can and can't do. There's never been a craft that you got so good at that you couldn't learn something else about it and deepen your knowledge. This is a great week for deepening your knowledge and deepening your understanding of how to do something, especially something that is physical and embodied. I've been talking about astrology and this kind of stuff, but you know that I do music, and so that's like an important frame of reference for me a lot of times. So there's something about music theory that you can analyze and you can understand, but then when it actually comes to playing it on the instrument, touching the instrument, making the instrument sing, even singing yourself, there's something about that you can't think your way into, you can't talk your way into. You got to do it. You got to feel what it feels like under your hands. You got to feel what it feels like in your throat and see what that leads to, what kind of embodied understanding that turns into. This is the kind of thing that is, so if we're thinking about a special message from the king, but we're also doing that in one of the yin signs. One of the things I always say about Mercury in a yin sign, that's going to be either your earth or your water signs. Mercury in Taurus is in an earth sign. So a Mercury Kazemi, a special message from the king in an earth sign, which is a yin sign, which is one of the more receptive, downward moving, understanding places for Mercury. Mercury is more of a listener in this space more than a speaker, right? To see a Mercury Kazemi in this place does look like shutting the hell up a little bit in order to understand something in a deeper way than you can simply talk about. That's one of the things that turns into a problem on the internet all the time, is that in order to simply be in the room in the first place, you have to have a take on something. You got to say something in order to participate, rather than sitting in a room and just being along with all the other people who are also there being, right? So this is a really good time to engage that listening faculty, engage that sensation. So like sense knowledge comes through really strongly in Taurus. And so as we spend this time here listening, if there's a special message from the king happening, then maybe this is a moment of like light bulb intuition. Oh, I can finally understand how to do this thing. Now that doesn't happen without reps. Mars and Aries alongside Saturn. Saturn is the monotonous planet, the one who wants to do it over and over and over, drill it another time. This is a really great moment for actually getting some real yield from doing the thing that is difficult to do. Do it over and over and over until it becomes an embodied understanding, and then in that place of embodied understanding, now you can turn that around, mutual reception, and be like, oh, I have something new to talk about. I have an interesting point here. I have a take that is deeper and more resonant than it would have been if I had not put that knowledge into my body.